Wake your ass up
or take a damn nap.
And we're the three best friends that anybody could have.
It's time.
Sean, you were twerking. That's going to happen.
Murph, don't be a dick all your life.
It's one of the more fun podcasts I've ever done.
Hey, I tell you what, if you're not talking about sports in the man cave, I better not say you not a man.
That's it.
We're going to play Thursday. Site has not yet been determined.
You'll text me though, right? Won't you?
Yeah.
Coach does a good job of that.
All right, Matt Stepp, you just witnessed the second ever miscue with technology on Stories Inside the Man Cave. Yeah, Matt Stepp, perhaps the busiest man in the state of Texas when it comes to high school football. And you don't see him right now, or you may see a still shot of him because he literally just left a planning meeting for the Texas high school football playoffs taking place at Jerry World up in Arlington. Matt Stepp, I ask this a lot and I say it a lot, but is this one of your career highlights in how to spend a Monday evening inside the Man Cave podcast?
Without question, Sean. It's been a dream of mine to join you in the Man Cave for a while now, and I'm super fired up. I just hate that I can't be there in the Man Cave with you. I'm in the virtual Man Cave.
Well, we'll definitely make this happen. Obviously this week would have been the best or ideal times to sit together in a man cave and have one of our favorite beverages. But first and foremost, this episode brought to you by Farmhouse Delivery here in Austin. Go to farmhousedelivery.com, order your organic produce, organic meats, put them in your cart, even meal kits, and use the promo code MANCAVE to receive 20% off of your first order. Now, Matt Stepp, we're going to talk about Dave Campbell, the legend he was in segment 2, and, that was a tremendous loss. But the next best thing to talk about is obviously this major production, which has become the Texas High School Football State Championship games up in Jerry World. And there happens to be 3 area teams from Austin playing up there that you will be able to cover. And 4 if you include Shiner, because they're about an hour and a half away. But your take, Matt Stepp, on this group of teams and the overall state championship field that will be in Arlington beginning Wednesday.
From a local perspective for the Austin schools, I feel like it's an outstanding group of teams. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we start with Westlake. I think they're the best team in the state of Texas, regardless of classification. Mm-hmm. And I think they're a heavy favorite to win on Saturday night. I'll be stunned if Todd Dodge doesn't end his career with a 3rd straight state championship there at Westlake. Liberty Hill, what Kent Walker's done, taking over for his late brother, Jeff Walker, getting the Panthers to a championship game in just their 2nd season as a 5A program has just been an unbelievable job. And it's a Liberty Hill team that started the year out slow. They started out with losses to LBJ and Colleen Ellison to open the season, and people were kind of writing those guys off, and they've righted the ship and avenged that semifinal loss to Crosby in an emphatic fashion for sure. So they're an underdog against South Oak Cliff, no doubt about it. South Oak Cliff's going to have a massive crowd on Saturday afternoon, and it's going to be a true road game for Liberty Hill. But when you're playing the slot T, anything can happen. And if South Oak Cliff's not ready to defend that offense, it's going to be a long day for sure. And then for LBJ, the job Jamal Fenner has done with that program, the challenges of an inner city program. South Oak Cliff's an inner city program as well. They have similar challenges to LBJ. Getting a team from the inner city to a state championship game is really impressive. And obviously it's going to be a fantastic showdown with Stephenville, number 1 versus number 2. Both of them are 15-0. I think that's a toss-up, pick-em type game. I think it could go either way, and it'll be worthy of a state championship game. And then, you expand out the area, Shiner. They're a big favorite against Hawley. I think they're a generational type Class 2A ball club with a chance to win back-to-back state championships. And there's no one more fun than the Texas high school football folk hero, Big Doug Brooks, their running back. He's impressive and he's fun to watch. And if you haven't seen him play, buckle up because he's a lot of fun.
That's exactly right. Shiner has been one of those programs that's been very consistent over the years in a state power. But, here, obviously, we'll get to Todd Dodge's retirement party that is fitting. But this LBJ crew, Jamal Finner, he's also he and his family dealing with the loss of a son of his. And, just in conversations, he wants the focus to be on this team as they try to find justice for that situation, and I'll respect that as well. But this is a soundbite from Coach Finner after they came back to rally in that state semifinal. And you talk about focus, Matt. This listen to the way he uses these words. These players are all bought in, and as you mentioned, inner city programs making it this far in the playoffs is such a rarity, and that's what makes this so special. Just take a listen to Coach Finner after that huge state semifinal win this past Saturday.
Don't lose your composure. Don't panic. Play all 4 quarters, and I've been telling them that all year, and I told them I'm guaranteed you're going to be successful. So to see them rally at the end and battle and pull that game off, man, it just speaks volumes about how resilient they are and how much they believe.
Now, did you happen to see that alley-oop pass that they had? I mean, they marched down the field. They were trailing, and then the game winner, I believe, with like 9 seconds remaining in the game.
So actually, I was in the press box at McLean Stadium in Waco watching. It was between the Katy Westlake game had just wrapped up, and so we were watching on my tablet the LBJ Chapel Hill ending. So I did get a chance to see the ending, and what a great play call, great execution by Oscar Gordon and the receiver whose name escapes me at the moment, but just a great play and great resiliency, like Coach Finner said. I mean, they were down 9 points with 5 minutes left in the game, needed 2 scores, and they got 2 scores and pulled it out. So they got the score, got a stop, and drove down, made a couple of big conversions late. And it just shows the resiliency of that LBJ Jaguar ball club.
It's amazing. And Matt Stepp here, he's one of the guys who's been in this business for quite some time. And he knows Texas high school football. If you want to go all the way up to Dalhart, Texas, all the way to Brownsville, from El Paso to Lufkin, Texas, he's got it covered. And it's pretty amazing to watch his work on Twitter. And his Twitter handle, Matt_Stepp with 2 P's and 817. That's the Fort Worth area. But now we talk about Todd Dodge. You mentioned it. We briefly mentioned the retirement party. What is it about you that you have enjoyed covering him? Because it was destiny, him returning to Westlake, his wife's, his late father-in-law, his wife's father, of course, Ebby Neptune. It just, you don't see many stories like that. And this is destiny. But how do you sum up this career? Because he's being able to walk away, which will probably be, and I hate to jinx it, a 3-peat state champion.
I've gotten to know Coach Dodge. When I was a young reporter and Coach Dodge was at South Lake Carroll, I was very intimidated by Coach Dodge. I was just scared to death of him, because he was Todd Dodge, even then at South Lake Carroll. And as I grew and got more mature as a reporter, I got to know Coach Dodge, and he's such a great guy. Like, you would think that he has coached in Division I college football. He's coached at all these great programs, that he'd be very aloof. He's anything but. So I've really appreciated getting to know Coach Dodge and getting to work with him and just that personal relationship that we have. As a football coach, he's a singular coach in Texas high school football history, from his great days as a player there in Port Arthur to what he accomplished at South Lake Carroll. People forget he kind of got a really good program started at Keller Fossil Ridge before he went to South Lake Carroll, and had that program kind of pointed in the right direction when he left and took the Carroll job over. So he's done great things at multiple schools, winning multiple state titles. His legacy is going to be, and he's gotten it done in a different way at Westlake, because, at South Lake, he was known as an offensive guru with wide open spread offenses. And at Westlake, his teams have really been known for having some of the best defensive ball clubs in the state of Texas. And it just shows the ability of him to manage a football team and play to his football team's strengths. And, this Westlake team, they got Cade Klubnik and they've got all the offensive firepower, but they're still really, really good on the defensive side of the ball, led by defensive coordinator Tony Salazar.
and who will more than likely he will be the coach. He's a coach in waiting.
I mean, it'll be a crime. It'll be a crime if Tony Salazar is not the next head coach at Austin Westlake.
I am right there with you, brother. It's what he's done with that defense is phenomenal, and I would love to hear your take on what you witnessed at McLean Stadium. I have never ever, and I know this sounds exaggerated, but I have never seen a Katy offense lose as many battles out physical because they're known for their old line and that run game, and Westlake disrupted that from the very first play from scrimmage. Have you ever seen Katy being I don't want to use the term manhandled, but lose those physical battles as much as they did against Westlake?
If they weren't manhandled, they were dominated. I mean, I've never seen it before. I mean, Katy, you just don't see Katy. You might see Katy lose, but if they lose, they're losing. They're going down fighting, and they're going down swinging, and they had no chance in this game. It was evident from after about the first two series of the game that Katy, this was a complete mismatch, and I don't think it speaks to that Katie's a bad football team. I think Katie's a really good football team. I think it speaks to the dominance of Westlake in every phase: physicality, execution, intelligence, scheme, all the above, depth. There's not a weakness on this Westlake ball club, and it's really, really, really something to behold.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think either last year, but I'll go ahead and say it. This year is perhaps is the best Westlake team in the history of that school from every aspect, from both sides of the ball, even the special teams. Matt Stepp, I have to ask you, if people follow you, and I have for about a better part of 8 years now, even when I was in Oklahoma City before I returned back to Austin, the hashtag Step Bomb. It has been something that has been more anticipated as I'll put it on par with all the transfer portal entries. Did you ever think when you created that hashtag, and I'm sounding like a Gen Zer right now or a millennial, but the hashtag's everything. But the Step Bomb, am I wrong for thinking that just is proof of the trust that the Texas high school coaches, how much respect and trust they have in you?
So I don't, honestly, I don't know. I know I personally did not create the Step Bomb hashtag.
Oh, okay.
I think a coach did, honestly. And then I think Danny Davis there at the Statesman, he made up a GIF of the Step Bomb, and I think that's when it started to take off a while back. But it's something. It's not. This. Being in journalism and especially sports journalism is definitely a relationship business.
100%.
And I think over time I've cultivated those relationships, and it's I've never jeopardized my journalistic integrity. I always make sure that the coaches know that I have a job to do, and I ask they respect the job that I have to do, much like I respect the job they have to do. So I think if you can foster a relationship of mutual respect and mutual trust, it can lend itself to being able to do the things that I've done, because I think the coaches, I've been a man of my word when it comes to certain things with coaches, and coaches talk. Coaches are very, my wife calls them the biggest gossipers in the world. They talk to each other a lot, and they say, hey, if you tell Step something, he's gonna be good for. It's gonna be good. He'll hold on to it if you need him to, that kind of thing. So I think it's something that didn't happen overnight. It just happened over time, and I think part of it is my. People ask a lot, how did I be able to develop relationships across the state of Texas? Well, it's because I travel across the state of Texas. Coaches are very they're wired in a certain way where they got to size you up in person. They need to meet you, they need to shake your hand, they want to size you up before they really tell you anything. They're not going to trust you if you're just a guy on the internet. So I think because I've traveled all over the state, I go to different events, I go to football games and multiple regional areas, I go to coaching school, I do those things. I think that's enabled coaches to be a little more trusting of me, and has kind of helped me foster those relationships over time.
And it's evident, and it's funny, I see the world from the other side now, but I still maintain some of those relationships. One of which with Colby Cartho at Stephen F. Austin. I know I believe you've had interactions with him.
Yes, I have. He's a fun Twitter follow.
Oh my God! What is it? He's always tweeting about food. And
my kind of guy right there.
Yeah. So if you were to list the 3 places, and I've asked Craig Way this, and he, as you would know, has a terrific top 10 across this great state of Texas, off highways I didn't know existed. If you were to list the top 3 places you love to eat in this great state of Texas, following and covering high school football, what are those?
All right, so this is hard because there's so many good places. I would say for Mexican food, I'll go Mexican food, barbecue, and then a wild card pick.
Okay.
So for Mexican food, it's got to be Costa Mesa down in McAllen. If you're gonna eat good Mexican food, you got to go to the Rio Grande Valley or El Paso.
Makes sense.
And I would say if I had to pick one, I'd go to the Rio Grande Valley and eat at Costa Mesa. For barbecue, I love Franklin's in Austin, but I just can't stand to wait in line that long.
You and I both.
But I'll say my favorite barbecue place aside from Franklin's is probably Killen's Barbecue. Mm-hmm. They're in Pearland. Love that place, and they have greens, and that makes it even better. So I love Killen's Barbecue in Pearland, and then my wild card pick is a chicken fried steak place. It's a little tiny cafe called Mary's in Strawn, Texas. And if you don't, Strawn is a 6-man football town. It's about halfway between Fort Worth and Abilene, right on I-20, just 2 miles north of I-20. It's Mary's Cafe, and she has the best chicken fried steak that I've ever had in my life. So those are probably my top 3.
I think I'm going to reward myself or gift myself for Christmas a trip to Strawn. You sold me at chicken fried steak. You sold me with greens at Killen's. But you got to admit, Matt, we're very spoiled in this state of Texas, especially with barbecue and Tex-Mex.
Oh yeah, we're spoiled. I mean, Texas is an underrated food state, and some of the bigger cities, especially, have a lot more diverse palates, and you can get food. Houston and Austin and the DFW Metroplex, you can get, you want to get good Chinese food or good Indian food, you can get it in those cities. So it's a lot more than just that. But yeah, we do barbecue and Tex-Mex right for sure.
Oh, we're blessed. So Matt Stepp, we go from some of the best food on the roads covering high school football to my favorite part of segment 1 of Stories Inside the Man Cave, the Jim Saxton State Farm Insurance Agency Man Cave story. What would be a story that you love talking about? Maybe interacting with the great coaches in the state of Texas, or maybe a game or something that happened along the way on your travels covering high school football in the state of Texas.
So I've got several I could share. The 2018 Hail Mary was awesome. I've got great stories about Mr. Campbell and some of the awesome memory the being at coaching school with Mr. Dave Campbell. Who obviously passed away last Friday at the age of 96, and his incredible memory and recall even into his 90s of coaches and how much time and care he put into the magazine. But I've got a great story from when I was a young reporter at Texas Stadium. I was in the press box during one of their famous playoff triple headers, and Coach Bill Parcells had just gotten hired by the Dallas Cowboys, and he came and for those who don't know, the legendary coach Gordon Wood at Brownwood, he was near the end of his life. I think he passed away about a month later. He was in the press box as he would go to playoff games at AT&T Stadium and sit in the press box for all 3 games and watch. He just loved high school football so much. And we're sitting there, and Coach, I would never have gone to talk to Coach Wood because Coach Wood was like an icon. My dad, he coached in Brownwood, and we're from Everman, and Everman and Brownwood were in the same district. And the way my dad spoke of Gordon Wood and the reverence that he spoke of him as a 20-something-year-old reporter, I was not about to go bother Coach Wood while he was watching football games. But we're sitting there, and the elevator opens up, and you hear in this big New Jersey voice, Bill Parcells, "Where's Gordon? Somebody tell me where Gordon's sitting." And he goes over there and walks over to talk to Coach Wood, and he shakes his hand, and they sit down there and talk. And what I didn't know is when Coach Parcells was a young assistant coach at Texas Tech, Coach Wood would drive from Brownwood to Lubbock, which is about 3 hours one way, and go watch Texas Tech go through spring practice And Coach Wood and Coach Parcells became friends because Coach Parcells was wondering who the quiet old man was there taking notes at his practice was. And they became fast friends. And Coach Parcells spoke so highly of Coach Wood. And so getting to see that as a young reporter, I just wished I could have sat there and listened to what they were talking about. Because just seeing Coach Parcells get off the elevator and just in that New Jersey accent ask where Gordon was one of the most awesome things I've ever seen.
Matt, that's a great story. You know what? I regret that I saw Coach Wood from afar a couple of times, and I regret never having the opportunity, or maybe I should have gone over there just to meet the legend himself. That he was a combination of old school and one of those trademark Texas high school football coaches, and there's only one of him.
Yes, he was also, people don't realize he was very progressive. You know, he integrated Brownwood much earlier than most schools. He integrated Brownwood in the early 60s. You know, he kind of saw what needed to be done in Brownwood. And if you look at Brownwood's early state championship teams in the early 60s, they were integrated well before the Prairie View Interscholastic League disbanded. He actually had integrated football teams there at Brownwood.
Brilliant. You know, yep. And you know what? If all of society would have followed that Coach Wood's lead, I think we'd be in a much better place than we are currently. That's just an opinion. And I know you, obviously we share that. And it's a lot can be learned from everybody from Texas high school football and how the coaching and true team. And of course, you know, the whole analogy with the huddle, Coach Bill Curry. I think Bill Curry is the one who initiated that.
Yeah, I believe so.
That's just a beautiful thing. So, Matt Stepp, Dave Campbell's Texas football, and you are now a veteran. You're approaching Texas high school football reporting legendary status. You're on the cusp. If you have a few, we're going to take a quick break. And you mentioned the late, great Dave Campbell, who we recently lost. We're going to honor him on the other side of this break with the great Matt Stepp and his Step Bombs himself on episode 105. We're going to take a quick break and we'll honor the great one, that being Dave Campbell, on the other side of this break. For all of your insurance needs, look no further than our primary sponsor, Jim Saxton State Farm Insurance Agency. The ATX OG has been insuring Austin for over 3 decades. And get this, Jim Saxton is a Longhorn legacy. He is the son of the late, great James Saxton, who was a Heisman finalist. Be sure to give him a call, or better yet, visit his website, saxtoninsurance.com, and tell him that the stories inside the Man Cave Boys recommended you.
The state of Texas lost a giant last night, and Texas high school football lost one of its best friends with the passing of Dave Campbell, the founder and editor-in-chief of Dave Campbell's Texas Football. Dave Campbell was 96. Dave Campbell started Dave Campbell's Texas Football on his kitchen table in 1960 in Waco, where he lived for 93 of his 96 years. The only 3 years that he didn't live in Waco, he was deployed overseas.
Unbelievable. Matt Stepp joining us here, and that's from your colleagues at, I still say, Fox Sports Southwest, new group, Bally Sports Southwest. They did a phenomenal job, all you guys do, and I know the man lived a fantastic, long life with a ton of accomplishments, but how do you sum up Dave Campbell? Because this loss has affected a lot of people. Matt Stepp.
You know, we all think about Mr. Campbell, Mr. Dave in the journalistic way, but I think Greg in our video on TexasFootball.com summed up what Mr. Campbell was as far as just a wonderful human being. He was a true Texas gentleman, and one of the most humble and modest men that you would think someone with the accolades, the cachet and the accomplishments of a man like Dave Campbell, from a journalistic standpoint, but also he was a war hero. mean, he was a Bronze Star in World War II. You would think someone like that would not be the most kind and humble gentleman that he was, but he really was. He was the sweetest man, and I didn't get a chance, the pleasure of meeting Mr. Campbell until he was at an advanced age. I think I met him, and I think he had just turned 91 when I met him for the first time. I'd been around him at conventions and things like that, and got my magazine signed by him and shook his hand, but never was introduced as someone who worked for Dave Campbell's until he was at an advanced age. Even then, he was he had such great memory, such great recall, and made you feel important. He took the time, even in his 90s, he would sit at coaching school and sign magazines for coaches. And he would try to give every signed magazine some sort of personal touch. If he knew the mascot of the school, he would put, hey, hope the Tigers have a great season this year. Good luck, number 4. He would always try to put a little something personal on each magazine that he signed. And, he was tired. He was in his 90s, and he would get tired, and he would refuse to leave. He would want to make sure everyone that was there got a signed magazine. And seeing the reverence of coaches, that coaches are a difficult lot to impress. And every single coach that would come by our booth and get a magazine signed by Mr. Campbell was just in awe of him. And this little old man who was the most quiet, unassuming man you would think of, had all those coaches, these big burly men of men. Football coaches are manly dudes, and all of them were just in awe of Mr. Campbell, and it was something to behold. And we're better for knowing him, but it's definitely a loss not having him around. But I try to look at it from a positive, and just am glad that even for a few years of his 96 years, I got to at least be around him and get to know him a little bit better as a person.
That was well stated. And I love that feedback from you, because you are obviously much closer to it than myself or to him. And I would say 99% of people in the high school football community are people who just love or just read the magazine. And, it's a commonly used phrase, the Bible of Texas football, high school, college, pro. But I know you, having been from Everman, I know when I was at Austin Anderson, we all couldn't wait to see whose name was listed for our capsule.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, in this day and age of digital media, it's awesome that something tangible like the printed paper still means something to kids. When I called Coach Dodge after Mr. Campbell's passing, and just to get, some words from him about Mr. Campbell, he mentioned it. He's like, our kids, Westlake, and it's funny, it binds everyone. You talk to, Westlake kids who, are a little more affluent than most. They go, when the magazine comes out, they're going to the store and getting their magazine and just as excited to see their name as the kid from the inner city or as the kid from rural Texas. I talked to Coach San Saba head coach Andreas Aguirre about it, and he was like, we have to drive an hour to get our magazines because there's no place in town that sells our magazine. We drive an hour to Walmart in Lampasas, and we go get our Dave Campbell's magazine. Those kids are just as excited. Those families are just as proud to see their kids or grandchildren's names in the magazine. So it's something that it's a unique thing. There's very few things that unite us all in Texas, and Texas high school football is one of those things. And Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine is kind of that binding agent that brings everyone together, and everyone. There's no one more. If there's anybody who has 100% approval rating in this world, it's Mr. Dave Campbell.
Well said, my brother. That I'm like you. I wish I would have had. Just at least if I could do it again, had to sit down and have a good conversation with him. For me, it was just, shaking his hand and telling him it was a pleasure of meeting you, but nothing in depth like that. Now, speaking of high school football, a guy that you covered, let's just say this is the new world, and we're going to transition back closer to home real quick to Austin, Texas. All right, my friend, one of the most bizarre with NIL, which I'm for, and the transfer portal, which I'm for, but it is wild, wild west in the great state of Texas or across college football. Quinn Ewers, Southlake Carroll greats. We saw him play against Westlake last year in the state championship game. He goes to Ohio State, skips his senior season to receive an NIL deal, goes to Ohio State. Now he entered the transfer portal officially with the tweet last night on Sunday night. He is now a Longhorn who was a Longhorn lean. Now he's coming back. Your thoughts on that, and does it surprise you of his move, or did it surprise you that he's, left early and not to play for Southlake this year? But is this an example of it all works out how it's supposed to?
That's a great question, and I think that story is still to be told. I hope it works out for Quinn. I think it's one of those things where maybe you look back on it, maybe he has some regret missing out on his senior season and going to Ohio State. I mean, it's hard to tell anyone to ever turn down that much money that he was being offered. I know I certainly wouldn't have the stomach to do that. But you wonder if looking back on it when he's a little older, if he regrets that decision, and maybe that leaving early and going to college a year early is a cautionary tale for some. But it has a chance to all work out. He's got, he still has his 4 years of eligibility left at Texas. He's coming into a situation where I know he wanted to get to Ohio State and try to compete for that starting job right away, but he didn't get up there until right before the season started. So the guys on the roster were all well ahead of him in their development, and clearly he wasn't the guy there. So getting this done now, maybe he gets to Texas with a fresh start, gets to start in the spring and have a legitimate chance to compete for the starting quarterback job and be able to play. And see if his talent does translate over the next level. I think it will. I think he's a unique talent, and will be a great college player. I just think he needs to get an opportunity to play, and hopefully at the university for Texas Longhorn fans and for him, he'll get that shot.
Now, I don't mean to put you on the spot here with this question, but with the landscape of college football right now, it allows players to basically transfer whenever, any day, and wherever they go. You covered some of the guys who are in that quarterback room right now. Hudson Card. I know Casey was in Oklahoma City. And then Charles Wright at Austin High School, who was a great quarterback that a lot of people don't talk about as much, but he was a pretty good prospect who could have gone to Iowa State and would probably maybe be the backup right now. But with Malik Murphy coming in from California, and I know you don't have as many opportunities to follow college football as you may like to, but from what you know, maybe this the opinion you have, do you think that will be everyone will return in that as we see it in that quarterback room with Malik Murphy from California and Quinn Ewers coming to Texas in the spring? And do you see all those quarterbacks sticking around, or what does your intuitive feelings tell you about that Texas quarterback situation?
I think that there will be at least one or two guys gone. I think there will be at least one or two guys that transfer out. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
It's a crowded quarterback room.
Yeah, some guys who could play or probably start elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree.
God. So, yeah, then to put the Quinn Ewers story to rest, I think what it'll do, it will provide a ton of competition. And I think the guys, I think majority will stick around in the spring to see where they may stand, if they may have a position change, possibly. Hudson, maybe the receiver where he was at Lake Travis early. I don't know. But all I know is that your opinion right there matters, and I agree with you. Hey, how about we end on some positivity? But first, before we get to the best part where we end with some positivity, I got to give a shout out to our brand new sponsor. We got him signed on, if you will, signed his national letter of intent with Stories Inside the Man Cave. Here's a reveal of the new addition to the family of sponsors and partners to Stories Inside the Man Cave. Kevin Hutchison, pride of Anderson High School. He's a Trojan as well, as we still have Quinn Ewer's picture over my right shoulder, that being to your left. But Kevin Hutchinson of Realty Austin, welcome aboard. You will be hearing and seeing from more of Kevin, and we really are grateful because this podcast would not be on the trajectory it is without people like him, and we wouldn't be having guests like Matt Stepp without all the efforts and the ability to bring people on like this. Matt Stepp, let's end with some positivity. And I know you have a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experiences. How about this transition?
Hey, man, tell me something good.
Tell me something good segment brought to you by Cosmic Coffee and Beer Garden. Well, that's where I hope to take Matt Stepp next time he is in the great city of Austin, Texas. All right, Stepper, tell me something good going on in your world, or what you feel is really something good that everyone needs to know about, maybe related to Texas high school football.
This is the easy one because, the state championships are this week. It's the best week of high school football you can find. And if you're a football fan, you can make it to Arlington this weekend. There's 12 great games over 4 days. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I think it's something that every football fan should experience at least once.
I don't disagree at all, and I'm sad to say it, and I'll put it out there right now. I think I may be missing this one due to prior obligations, but I'm with Matt. He's seen a lot of these, seen a lot of great football, and if you get an opportunity, head down or head up to Arlington for those days. It's cheap. Would you say it's one of the biggest events in the state of Texas, which is affordable for a family?
Yeah, I agree. It's $20 for a ticket, but you get to see 3 games for $20. So it's a pretty good value.
I agree. Hey, Matt Stepp, follow him again on Twitter. And this is his Twitter handle. He's a lot of fun, insightful information, covers high school football unlike no other in this great state. And he is affiliated with Dave Campbell's Texas Football. That would be at Matt_Stepp with an extra P, 817, the pride of Fort Worth and Everman, Texas. Brother, I really appreciate you joining us to talk high school football and about the great man that was, rest in peace, the Dave Campbell.
Appreciate the opportunity, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And for the high school football journalist that he is, Matt Stepp, and for the OG Man Cave boys, that being Big Mike, Hardball Harge, and Coach Mo, we are out.
You see the drippy, I'm fitted up. Hop in my car and the giddy up.